We are looking at the rise of Islam. Yesterday we considered where it started and the person who is responsible for bringing the Muslim faith into the world. Today we're going to look at the teachings of Islam. First we need to understand the sacred book of the Muslims is called the Quran. Now sometimes you'll see it spelled with a Q, Q-U. Sounds similar, don't be confused, it's talking about the same thing. The word means recitation. So the Quran is supposedly a recitation of things that were given to Muhammad from the angel Gabriel. This book was not compiled until after Muhammad's death. And it's made up of a group of revelations, like I said, given by Gabriel to Muhammad through numerous dreams and visions and recorded later. It was not recorded by Muhammad himself because Muhammad could not read or write. So this is all what the followers heard him say and then wrote down. All right, any questions about where the Quran came from? It's arranged in 114 chapters, and it's repetitious and unorganized. One of the things that I heard a former Muslim say is that the chapters of the Quran are not arranged chronologically. So it's not like you start at the beginning and then you go to the next chapter and continues on. It's arranged according to length. So I think it's the longest chapters are at the beginning, and then you go on. So you may be reading a chapter and want to go on, okay, what's the next thing? Well, it may not be the next chapter. It may be because it's a smaller chapter. It may be further back in the book. So it's really hard to make sense of it even as you're trying to read it. The central doctrine of this work is monotheism, a term that you are very familiar with. And who is the one God of Islam? Everybody say it together. Allah. Right, Allah, good. Allah has 99 attributes or names. The 100th one is known only to the camel. So I guess it's a secret. He has 100 names, but we only know 99 of them. Allah sent more than 100,000 prophets to reveal His will to man over the years. 100,000 prophets Allah sent. But Muhammad is the last and greatest, and the Quran the final revelation, superseding all others. Now there are 28 major prophets out of that 100,000, and they include people like Alexander the Great was a prophet of Allah, they say. The 5 major prophets, the 8 major, but then there's 5 really major prophets. The most important prophets before Muhammad were Adam. There's Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Moses. Oops, that's only 4, isn't it? Who would the 5th one be?
John.
John the Baptist?
No, John the Apostle.
Oh, no.
John the Baptist?
No. Jesus is the 5th prophet, right. Muhammad is greater than all of these, but these are considered the 5 major prophets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Muhammad is greater than all 5 of those. And there are 28 other major prophets besides the 5. So interesting. Okay, now let's look at the the sources. No, we're not ready for that yet. Next, I think in your notes you have stresses.
Yes.
All right. So that means what is stressed? No, it's not stresses like, oh, this is so stressful. Now, what are the stresses? What are the main points, the main ideas of the Quran? First is the idea of judgment. Dun, 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 dun. judgment. And along with that, the second stress is on heaven and hell. The third one is a stress on morality, including abstention, staying away from wine. No wine. Fourth is almsgiving. What is that? What's almsgiving? It's usually added to tithing. It's giving to the poor. Almsgiving is giving to the poor. So that's one of the stresses. Another one is aiding strangers. Another thing that's stressed is the limitation that men can have 4 of something. Wives. You can have 4 wives. Although I wouldn't recommend it. 1 will be all you can handle. But they can have all the concubines they could afford. You can only have 4 wives, but you can have lots of concubines, which are basically women that you keep around for sexual purposes. All right, so 4 wives. Next, there's an attitude of fatalism. F-A-T-A-L, fatalism, which they define as passive submission to the will of Allah. Okay, are you familiar with the word fatalism, or something is fatalistic? Have you heard that word before? It just means whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And what they believe is that whatever's going to happen is the will of Allah. So whenever something happens, they will simply say, it's the will of Allah. It's the will of Allah. So I've talked to my brother, who was in Army intelligence, about this, and he was over in 2 different wars in the Middle East, particularly, dealing with Iraq. And he said that he saw that playing out as he came to understand the culture over there, that even as one Muslim nation would attack another Muslim nation, the one that won, they would say, it was the will of Allah. So they could even do terrible things to one another, and whatever happened, it was the will of Allah. There is a movie I would recommend to you. This is just a great movie called Lawrence of Arabia. Have you ever heard of that? It's about 3 hours long. It's one of those epic movies. And it's based on a true story. But there's an event in that movie that really helped me to understand the mindset concerning fatalism. Lawrence is a British officer who is trying to get the Arab tribes during World War I to join together, to quit fighting among themselves, and join together to fight against the Ottoman Empire, or the Turks. Now, they're both Muslim, but the Turks are not Arabs, and the Arabs don't like the Turks. And the Turks had come in, as we'll see later, and took over a lot of the territory of the Arabs and became Muslim. But the Arabs are, the original Muslims. So he's trying to get them. But the problem is they fight against each other all the time, all these different Arab tribes. Remember, we talked about before about how Ishmael was called a wild donkey. And one of the characteristics of the Arabs is they're constantly fighting with one another. So he's got this task. So he finally gets the chieftains of these different tribes to come together for this purpose of going and fighting against the Turks during World War I to help out the British. And in order to attack a seaport in such a way that will surprise the Turks, they have to go across the desert. And the Turks don't even defend the city on that side because no one would dare do that. But they are. Lawrence and these other Arabs are going across the desert. Well, there's this one guy that Lawrence had become friendly with. I think he maybe did some translation for him. And they are going during the night when it's cooler, and they're all tired. And this one guy falls asleep on his camel and falls off, and nobody notices. So later on, they arrive someplace, and Lawrence is looking around for this guy, and nobody's seen this. He must have fallen off back in the desert. And Lawrence said, "Okay, I'm going to go get him." No, that's stupid. Don't do it. You'll not survive. It's not worth it for you to give up your life to go save him. Allah wills it. It's the way it is. But Lawrence doesn't listen, being that even though he is not necessarily, he's not a follower of Christ, but he's grown up in a nation which has a Christian worldview in which every life is valuable. And so he goes and he finds the guy and gets back, and as he arrives back, he is almost dead himself. But he saves the life of this guy. And you think, wow, that was really something. Well, sometime later, there was an argument between the different tribes, and somebody in one tribe shot a person in the other. So now they're going to go to battle, these two Arab tribes, because you can't let that go. They've got to avenge themselves on the one who shot one of their tribe members. And so Lawrence is trying, he knows this is going to totally break apart the whole coalition that he had formed. And so he's got to do something to stop this battle happening. And so he asked, what can be done? They said there's only one thing that can be done, and that's if the person who killed the other Arab, if he is executed by you. That because if somebody on the other side does it, then that'll just cause more bloodshed. and his own people aren't going to do it. So Lawrence is going to have to get the guy. They know who did it. Has to get the guy and kill him in order to keep a major battle from happening. You follow so far? So he has to go do this. He doesn't want to do it, but he has to. When they bring the guy forward for Lawrence to shoot, to execute him, it's the same guy he had rescued in the desert. And he has to do it. And what do the Arabs say in response? See, we told you it was the will of Allah. You should have just left him to die in the desert, because it was Allah's will that he die anyway. And you just made it harder. That's the framework. That's the mindset that they have. It's fatalistic. Everything is decreed by Allah, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so that's fatalism. Eighth, one of the themes that you find in the Quran is that there are sexual pleasures in heaven. Heaven or paradise is apparently designed around men, and they have all kinds of sexual pleasures and food. It's like a big party all the time. And then ninthly, excuse me, a theme in the Quran is militarism. Militarism, militarism. So what do you think that means? If they're militarist. John? Yeah, being very aggressive militarily, conquering people. You hear a lot in recent years about how Islam is a religion of peace. Well, not if you read the Quran. If you read their book, it's very militaristic. It's much about conquering people and killing certain people. And I think I wonder if I had this on a slide. I just did not go to it. Okay, I guess not. All right, so those are the stresses. Now, if a person wanted to convert to Islam, they wanted to become a Muslim, what do they have to do? It's a simple process. All they have to do is to declare in the presence of another Muslim this: there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. If you do that, you're a Muslim. Now, I hope there are no Muslims in here, because if there are, I would just become a Muslim. So be careful if you ever say that. No, I would not consider that, although some Muslims might. And once you're a Muslim, you're always a Muslim. You can never get out of it. Once you declare yourself to be a Muslim, you are always a Muslim. And if you do try to get out, apostatize, fall away, then the punishment for that is death. Yeah. Now, it's that idea that once a Muslim, always a Muslim, which has led many people in the United States to consider the upbringing of our former president, President Obama, because he was brought up in a Muslim country for a time, went to a Muslim school, and the thinking is undoubtedly he said those words that would have been common there, and having done that, would have declared himself to be a Muslim. You know, of course, now he says he's a Christian, but it may be that other Muslims don't look at him that way. They may still view him as a Muslim. It's hard to say. All right, what are the sources of the Muslim faith? Well, as Muhammad put these ideas together, remember he came in contact with some people as a part of being a camel herder, and he put that together with some of the religion of the Arab tribes. So first of all, animism is a part of what became the Muslim religion. Animism, remember from Bible class? What is animism?
Like spirits and objects and worship objects.
Yeah, spirits are in all different objects. So that's a part of it. There's spirits everywhere. In fact, one of the things that you're familiar with that comes from the Muslim world is the idea of a genie. Right? You've all seen Aladdin, probably, the movie Aladdin, where you see something about Aladdin and his lamp. What is it? You know, the funny character is a genie, right? Well, what's a genie? A genie is a spirit, a demon. So there's a strong belief in that, in the spirits and everything. The second source of the Muslim faith comes from Judaism. That is the Jewish faith. And that's, of course, the idea that there is one God, and there's some other ideas that are thrown in there. And also Christianity. Again, the one God coming from Christianity. So Muhammad took ideas from these different places, but what he understood of Judaism and Christianity, he didn't understand quite correctly and distorted what we would consider to be biblical truth. So, for example, let's see, God has sent prophets to all the peoples of the world at various times. That's kind of out of place. We've already talked about that. Okay, I guess we'll don't have this on the screen. They reject the doctrine of the Trinity. They absolutely abhor the idea that there are three persons in one. They say, God, you cannot have a son. No, that's an awful thing to think of, that God has a son. So there's no Trinity. There's one God. They deny that Christ is the Son of God because of that idea. And then thirdly, they even deny that Jesus Christ was crucified. Now, if you just want to point out an historical error in the Quran, that's it. They say Jesus Christ wasn't crucified. Well, not only does the Bible teach something different, but history teaches something different. There are Roman historians like Tacitus and others that talk about him being crucified, but they deny that. So totally misunderstand what Muhammad totally misunderstood what he did in order for Christianity. All right, so the Muslim faith believes that God has sent prophets to all the peoples of the world at various times in history, but Muhammad is the greatest. All scriptures were sent to the world's people, all being the revealed scripture of the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So those they accept all those as scripture, the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. They say scripture must be accepted as a gift of guidance from God. Of course, they have a strong belief in angels as being part of the unseen world. The angels are carrying out God's tasks, and on Judgment Day, all souls will be resurrected for judgment. Each soul will be held accountable for their good and bad actions. So your salvation is based on your works, although not entirely. Ultimately, the final determining factor on whether you enter into heaven or not is not even your works. It's what Allah wants. And you could live a life in which you do all good works, all that you can. You're a good Muslim. You do everything you can right. You do all the stuff, all the creed we're going to look at here, all the 5 pillars, and you still might come before Allah and He'd say, "No, you're not getting into heaven," because it's totally up to Him. So you never know. You know, a person lives their life never knowing whether they'll go to heaven or not, except for one thing. There's one way you can automatically get into heaven. You know what that is? One way that guarantees you going into heaven. It's the only way as a Muslim that you can guarantee you'll get there. Is by becoming a martyr, being killed for the faith, which includes blowing yourself up to kill other people. That's why there's no shortage of people that are willing to do that, because that's the only way that's for sure that they'll get into heaven. And besides that, you get all the men get all these versions and stuff that will belong to them as well. All right, so that takes us then to the 5 pillars. Let's look at the 5 pillars of Islam, and these pillars are duties performed in order to reach heaven. So here's what they do. First of all, and there's the symbol of the Muslim faith. Remember, we've got the crescent moon for Allah, the moon god. The creed of Islam is a way to centralize all Muslim beliefs. It states the basic beliefs. So this is called the creed. The 5 pillars are called the creed. All right, so the first is confession. And this is the most important part of the creed. And it is to confess that there is but one God, Allah. We're not talking about confessing sins here. Confession is saying what you believe is true. So this is the daily recitation, in fact, of this, that there is one God but Allah, and Muhammad is His prophet. This is also called the Shahada. That's the Arabic name for it, the Shahada. So it's the main statement of the Muslim creed. There is no God except Allah, and Muhammad is His prophet. Say that every day. Muslims are also required to believe in angels and a day of judgment after death. The quote that's reflected here in the Shahada is written on the flag of Saudi Arabia. And it's believed that you must be able to recite it wholeheartedly to be a good Muslim. It must be recited 3 times to witness in order to convert to being a Muslim. Okay, so saying it once wasn't enough. I had to have said it 3 times, although I think I probably have said it at least 3 times today. All right, any questions about the Shahada? I would like you to know it as confession and know the word Shahada. So maybe I should say it all together. All right, on 3, say Shahada. 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think you all said it correctly. It's hard to tell for sure. Shahada. The next pillar is prayer. Reciting prescribed prayers. These are prayers already written out for you. And that's called the Sala'ah. Sala'ah. Everybody say Sala'ah.
Salah.
Okay, there you go. These prayers must be said 5 times a day while facing toward Mecca. So if you are flying on an airplane, like I have, going over in the Middle East part of the world, you know, on the screen, if you've ever been on an international flight, there's a screen there that you can watch TV, movies. Also, you can flip over to where it shows you information about the plane, and they will show you on that which way is Mecca, so you'll know if you're a Muslim which way you need to face to pray. And maybe you have your prayer rug and put it out in the aisle and do that. I've not seen that done, but I've heard about it happening on airplanes. So 5 times a day you've got to pray. It's done at dawn, noon, late afternoon, immediately after sunset, and before sleep. And here's a picture of Muslims bowing down and praying, all facing the same way because they're all facing toward Mecca. Now you notice their head is all the way down on the ground. I can't remember what country I was in, but I think it was Egypt. I noticed a couple of men that had red round marks on their heads, and I thought, that's kind of odd. Did they put that there or what? And I asked somebody, I asked our guide about it, and he said, no, that shows how devout they are as Muslims, that they put their head down so hard on the ground that it leaves a bruise. They have a kind of a permanent bruise, and that's something they can be proud of. You know, people look at them and say, oh, that person really prays hard. And he's got a bruise on his forehead 5 times a day, bowing down. They have a call to prayer in which a person called the muezzin, that's this person, climbs up the minaret, this tower, and calls the faithful to prayer. Now, today, they use amplification. So if you're in a Muslim city, you might hear over loudspeakers the call to prayer, and then the prayer is being given. The ritual prayer contains certain ablutions, such as the washing of hands, feet, face, arms, and hair. In other words, you're supposed to wash yourself before you pray. If you don't have any water available, use dust. So you use the sand, whatever, to cleanse yourself. The person would stand erect, raise your hands with palms forward, and then bow. He then prostrates himself on the ground, and finally ends his prayer in a sitting or squatting position. For his final prayer, the Muslim turns to his left and to his right to address the 2 angels supposedly sitting on his shoulders. So they believe that all Muslims have those angels. All right, so here's an example of what it sounds like. The muezzin calls the people to pray, and he says, Allahu Akbar. If you've known anything about terrorist attacks, you'll know that that's what they cry out before they start killing people. And so when you're someplace and you hear somebody calling out Allahu Akbar, that may mean they're about to give glory to Allah by killing people. Or maybe it's the beginning of the prayer. Allah is most great. And then they say, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And then twice they say, come to prayer. Twice, come to the good. And then twice again, Allah is most great. And then they finish with, there is no God but Allah. Here are the 5 times during the day that Muslims are required to pray. And you can see those different times. In addition, you're told if you wake up during the night, then you should get up and pray an additional time. Indicated there. So 2 additional prayers should be said during the night to make a total of 7. Now, one of the things associated with the prayers is praying on a rug. And so tapestry has become very important in the Arab world for Muslims. You can read what it says here. The first actual prayer rug was made around the 14th century, but Muhammad is depicted sitting on a prayer rug. It's considered to be an act of respect, so you're putting something between yourself and the ground. Is the idea. Cleanliness is required, which we've talked about. So today, if you go over to the Middle East, you can find all kinds of rugs for sale. Very nicely done rugs. They're very well woven, very beautiful. And of course, in the stories that come out of the Muslim faith, we have not only rugs, but flying rugs, or flying carpets. That's a prayer rug is what that is, a flying carpet. So in this picture we see even Muslim babies pray. They are taught to do that from a very young age. Any questions about the prayers? That's pillar 2. All right, the third pillar is called giving alms, which is called a scot or a scat. Jews, remember, were required to give a tithe, which was normally, today we consider a tithe to be how much? How much? 10%. Now, really, for the Jewish people, it was higher than that. Most people think it was 10%, but by the time you added up all the different tithes, it was higher than that, because that included money that was taken for the government as well. And it was of all the goods that you had, not just your income. Muslims give about 2.5% annually. So that's what they're required. But giving alms then becomes a greater possibility. They're supposed to give spontaneously to the poor, the homeless, or wherever need is deemed greatest. And so you do have a lot of people begging in Arab countries, and because Muslims are expected to give alms. And so you would expect a good Muslim might give you something. All right, that's all I have to say about alms. Any questions? Okay, the next one is fasting. And the greatest time of fasting is during the Islamic month of fasting called Ramadan. I want you to remember that word, Ramadan. You ever heard of Ramadan before? Any one of you? During Ramadan, they fast from sunrise to sunset for a month. It's the 9th lunar month. They're on a lunar calendar. And so that usually falls sometime in June or July. So for a month, they're fasting from sunrise to sunset. And that's believed to be the time when Muhammad received the revelation of the Quran. Muhammad fasted during this period of sacred dispensation, receiving revelation from God. So it is believed that his followers must do so as well. Feasting and merrymaking can take place during the evening hours. So once the sun goes down, you can eat and do whatever you want. But during the day, you are to fast. And then at the end of Ramadan, there's a 3-day celebratory feast. So that's Ramadan. When I was helping my parents to get things ready for them to move out of a house into a retirement center, I think it was a Pakistani family had moved in next door a year or so ago, and it was during Ramadan. That evening, as we've been working all day in the house trying to get it cleaned out, there's a lot of stuff to take care of. And at some point, some of them came over and bought some stuff that we were selling. So talked to them a little bit, and they invited us to come to the meal that evening. Oh man, I wish we could have, but we were so beat, so tired that we just couldn't see expending that much more energy to go in that night. We just wanted to eat something and take a shower and go to bed. But they eat it at night, and that's fine. Any questions about the fasting or the month of Ramadan? All right, next is the pilgrimage, called the Hajj. The pilgrimage to Mecca. So it's expected that every Muslim, at least once in their lifetime, would travel to Mecca. And that greatly enhances the chances for salvation. And it's to remind them of the great devotion that they owe Allah by traveling to Mecca. The time frame is a certain one. It's a 70-day long period in which you are to make this Hajj. And that's 2 months after Ramadan. So you fast during the month of Ramadan. 2 months later is when you're supposed to make your trip to Mecca. All the men wear 2-piece seamless garments of white cloth, and women wear plain black and white robes. This explains a little bit about the Hajj. About 2 million Muslims went in 1999. 1 million from Saudi Arabia, 6,000 from the U.S. American pilgrims are increasing all the time as more and more Muslims are living in America. several ceremonies that are performed while they're there. Muhammad said that a person who performs Hajj properly will return as a newly born baby free of all sins. So a way to get your sins forgiven. It also enables Muslims from all around the world to come together in a spirit of universal brotherhood and sisterhood to worship the one God together. And here's some random pictures of Mecca and what takes place during the Hajj. Here is the city of Mecca, and here it is during the Hajj. You see all this? Those are people. It's hard to imagine that many people crammed in together, but what you see there white are all heads of men. Do you recognize that?
Oh, that's the little black stone.
That's the black building in which the black stone is located, the Kaaba. So see all these people gathered. Every once in a while, there's so many people there, and if anything happens to cause a panic or a rush, people die because there's so many people there that if a bunch of people start moving, people get trampled, and so periodically that happens. All right, any questions about the Hajj or any of the 5 pillars? All right, hopefully through this you can understand maybe more about the Muslim faith than you did before. And as it's becoming more and more likely that you're going to come across Muslims, and maybe talk to them, you will know something about what they believe so that you can have an intelligent conversation and maybe approach them about the truth. Tomorrow we're going to look at what they have to say about Jesus and find some things there that might give us an opportunity in talking with a Muslim. All right, for tomorrow, let's see, I think we will save the next assignment until Friday. If you want to do it ahead, it's on the board, but I won't assign it until tomorrow for Monday.